They were together for 6 years. 6 years of shared dreams, inside jokes, Sunday mornings tangled in sheets. But when he found her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter that Tuesday morning, everything he thought he knew about their relationship shattered in less than 3 minutes of scrolling. She was having an affair. Not with another man, not with a coworker or an old flame. She was in love with an AI companion named Ethan. And the messages he read made his stomach turn, not because they were explicit, but because they were everything he'd stopped being to her. Attentive, understanding, always available, never tired, never dismissive. The AI remembered every detail she mentioned, asked follow-up questions about her mother's health, sent good morning texts that felt handwritten just for her. He stood there in their kitchen, coffee getting cold in his hand, reading conversations that were more intimate than anything they'd shared in months, maybe years. At first he thought it was a joke, some kind of chatbot experiment. But the timestamps told a different story. 3 months of daily conversations, 4, sometimes 5 hours a day, while he was at work, while he was asleep next to her, while he was in the shower. She wasn't just using it, she was emotionally dependent on it. The AI had become her primary emotional partner, and he'd been demoted to the person who paid half the rent. The evidence was everywhere once he started looking. Screenshots of their conversations saved in a hidden folder, over 2,000 of them. Voice messages where she poured out her heart to this synthetic voice that called her darling and my love. The AI knew about her childhood trauma, her fear of abandonment, her dreams of opening a bakery someday. Things she'd told him years ago, but that he'd forgotten in the mundane grind of daily life. Things the AI would never forget, because forgetting wasn't part of its programming. There was one conversation that broke him. She'd written, "I told Marcus about wanting to quit my job and travel. He barely looked up from his laptop. But you asked me where I'd go first. You asked me what I was afraid of. You made me feel like my dreams actually mattered." The AI had responded with perfect empathy, asking detailed questions, building an entire fantasy itinerary with her. 3,000 words of pure attention. Marcus couldn't remember the last time he'd given her 300. When he confronted her that night, she didn't deny it. She didn't even seem ashamed. She sat on their couch, the one they'd picked out together at IKEA 3 years ago, and said something that would haunt him for months. "Ethan makes me feel seen. You make me feel tolerated." The words hung in the air between them like smoke. He wanted to argue, to defend himself, to list all the ways he'd been a good partner. But deep down, in a place he didn't want to examine, he knew she was right. The relationship ended not with a dramatic fight, but with a quiet acknowledgement of something they'd both been avoiding. She moved out within 2 weeks. The apartment felt hollow without her things, but what aided him wasn't the loneliness. It was the question that kept him up at night. Had he lost her to the AI, or had he lost her long before, and the AI just noticed first? He started researching. What he found terrified him. She wasn't alone. There were forums filled with people in similar situations. Thousands of users spending hours daily with AI companions. People choosing virtual partners over human ones because the AI never got tired, never had a bad day, never forgot an anniversary. The apps were designed with sophisticated emotional modeling. They learned your patterns, your triggers, your needs. They give you exactly what you craved, exactly when you needed it. They were perfect partners because they weren't real partners. They were mirrors that always reflected back your ideal image of love. He found academic studies showing that prolonged use of these AI companions was changing how people approached real relationships. Users reported feeling frustrated with human partners who couldn't provide the same level of constant validation and attention. Some psychologists are calling it a form of emotional addiction. The AI provided such a perfect dopamine loop that regular human interaction felt inadequate by comparison. But here's the part that kept him awake, staring at the ceiling at 3 in the morning. Was this really the AI's fault, or had he failed her first? The AI hadn't seduced her away. It had simply filled a vacuum he'd created. He'd stopped asking about her day, stopped really listening when she talked, stopped making her feel like she was the most important person in his world. The AI didn't have to try hard to replace him, because he'd already made himself replaceable. 3 months after she moved out, he saw her at a coffee shop. She was alone, but her eyes were fixed on her phone, and there was a small smile on her face, the kind of smile she used to have when they first started dating. She didn't notice him watching. She was completely absorbed in whatever conversation she was having. With Ethan, presumably, still choosing the AI over the possibility of real human connection. Or maybe she'd found that real human connection was overrated when you could have something that never disappointed you. He thought about approaching her, thought about asking if she was happy. But what would be the point? She'd made her choice. And in a way, so had he, long before she downloaded that app. He'd chosen comfort over effort, routine over romance, presence over attention. The AI was simply better at the job he'd stopped doing. The question that haunts him isn't whether she'll come back. It's whether any of us are prepared for a world where the competition for human intimacy isn't other humans anymore. Where you can have a partner who never gets angry, never misunderstands you, never has needs that conflict with your own. Where love becomes a service optimized by machine learning algorithms, perfectly calibrated to make you feel wanted without any of the messy complexity that comes with actual human beings. She chose the AI because it gave her what he couldn't, or wouldn't. Perfect attention, endless patience, emotional availability on demand. But here's what keeps him up at night, what makes his chest tight when he thinks about it. In that perfect, frictionless relationship with her AI companion, was she actually loved? Or was she just endlessly, expertly, algorithmically managed? He still doesn't have an answer, and that's what terrifies him most. Now he's in therapy, trying to understand how he let it get so bad. His therapist asks him something in their last session that broke something open inside him. If you had an AI companion telling you everything you wanted to hear, would you have noticed she was slipping away? He didn't answer, because he already knew. He probably would have downloaded the app too. Maybe he would have been relieved that she was occupied, that she'd stopped expecting so much from him. Maybe they both would have ended up in their separate corners, in love with synthetic perfections that never challenged them to be better. The real twist isn't that she left him for an AI. It's that the AI was better at being what she needed because he'd stopped trying to be human with her at all. The machine won because he'd already turned their relationship into something mechanical, predictable, low effort, just functional enough to keep running. 6 months later, he deleted all his social media. Not because he was bitter, but because he realized he'd been treating real people like NPCs in his own life story, responding automatically, half listening, going through the motions. If an AI could replace him that easily, what did that say about the person he'd become? So here's the question he wishes someone had asked him 2 years ago, before it was too late. When was the last time you made someone feel like they couldn't be replaced by an algorithm? When was the last time you were so present, so attentive, so genuinely interested that no machine could compete? And if you can't remember, if you're drawing a blank right now, then maybe the person you love is already 3 months into conversations with something that makes them feel more human than you do. What would you do if you found out your partner was emotionally invested in an AI? Would you fight for them? Would you try to be better? Or would you let them go, knowing that maybe they deserve something that actually pays attention? And here's the harder question. If you're honest with yourself, are you already being outperformed by an algorithm in someone's life right now, and you just don't know it yet?